Fraser Public Library Intro to Video. My name is Kristen and I am the Programming and Youth Services Librarian here at Fraser Public Library. Now, I wanted to take some time today to walk you through one of my favorite pastimes in one of the ways that helps me relax, and that is making a quilt. Now, if you've never sewn anything before in your life, if you've never touched a sewing machine, then this is probably not a good video for you. It does take a little bit of knowledge of a sewing machine to be able to put together a quilt top. So if you've never touched a sewing machine before, this is probably not a good video for you. But if you have, then I am going to show you what I do to start a quilt, get it started, start piecing together my quilt top. Now, this is just going to be showing you how I piece together a quilt top. This is not going to be showing you how to actually assemble a quilt with a top and a bottom and batting in the middle and then sewing all the way in between those, etc. We're just going to be piecing the top together or starting that today. Now, I'm going to show you the fabric I'm going to be using. I've already got some of it cut into 2.5-inch strips because it was part of a jelly roll, which is a huge pile of fabric that the quilt shop was very nice to cut into 2.5-inch strips for me. So it's this kind of green blue that you can't really see very well because my screen makes it look very blue, but it's not, it's more green, sorry. And then I've also got gray or a silvery type fabric. And I've got several different varieties of that and several different varieties of my green. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to actually walk you through the cutting process and then the piecing together process. So the sewing the pieces together. You will need a sewing machine. This is my little tiny featherweight sewing machine that I use for small projects. And then I also have some rulers here. Kind of wanted to show you like my setup because it's not all that large. You don't need a ton of space to be able to sew and quilt. You just need space for your sewing machine and space to cut, which is where my computer is actually sitting right now. So I will show you that because I'm going to switch to an overhead cam to show you all of the little bits and pieces that I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to switch to that overhead cam right now. Hi again, everybody. So I am sharing my screen and I've got overhead camera to show you the next steps that we're going to do. So here's my silver fabric. This actually is a little bit more of a good representation of what the fabric actually looks like. And then this is, hold on, I gotta switch. This is the blue-green. It is really more of a green, as you can tell, than it is a blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cut these into pieces that will go into the quilt that I'm going to make. Now, the quilt block that I'm making is called a log cabin. And what that is it's strips. So it's strips that you sew together in a specific way so that it makes it look like a log cabin. So there's strips going this way, and then there's strips going this way, and then there's another strip across the top and down the side, and they get smaller progressively until the one in the middle is just a 2.5-inch square. So what I've decided to do, because I don't make things easy for myself, no, I have to make things super complicated. But what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to make my, that one goes here, my quilts with the greens and the blues ombre looking. And ombre means that it's progressively going to get from one saturation to another. So in this case, it's going to be really light in the middle. And then on the outside, it's going to get really dark. So it's going to be super saturated. So something like this with a lot of that green-blue color. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut the colors that are lighter, so these that have more white incorporated with them to make it look a little bit less saturated. Those are going to go in the middle of my block, and then these are going to be towards the outer edge a little bit, so in between the middle and the outer edge, and then this is going to be on the outer edge. My grays, I really don't care about. My grays are just going to be a neutral background. So those don't really matter as much. So I'm not as concerned with these, but these I have to be a little bit more concerned about. So I'm going to move my grays out of the way so that I can cut, and I'm just going to cut enough fabric strips to be able to do what I want to show you for a block. Just enough to do one block. That way you've got an idea as to what you can do, and you can go from there. All right, so we're going to start with, I need a 2.5 inch square. Now you'll notice on my fabric here, hold on, I gotta figure out where the sweet spot is on this camera. This one's not a good piece. You'll notice on fabric that there is something called a salvage edge. This is easier, salvage edge. This strip of white on the edge has actually little pinholes in it, and that's what helps attach it to the devices that weave the fabric. Well, what that means for us is that we don't want that in our quilt. You don't want a salvage edge in your quilt because it's very noticeable and the fabric is a little bit weakened because of those pinpricks. I know you can't really see them on the camera, but they're there, I assure you. You can see them in person. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut off the salvage edge on these strips. So I'm going to start with what is going to be my centerpiece, which is going to be this. And I just need a 2.5 inch square out of this fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I cut that. I'm lining up both edges. And I'm actually going to line that up on my cutting board or my cutting mat so that the edge of the fabric lines up with one of these ruler lines. And that makes it easier so that when I'm cutting, I know I'm doing something straight. I know it doesn't look straight on the camera because the camera's at a little bit of an angle. I couldn't get it directly in front of me without compromising my arm space and having to work around a camera from both sides. So I decided, sorry guys, you're gonna get a bit of a skewed perspective. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rotary cutter, which is what this is. It is a blade with a central pin and it spins freely. So what you'll do is you'll use it to spin. I'm not going to open it right now because it is a very sharp blade. And most blades have to be really sharp in order to cut fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this guy up and I'm going to cut off my salvage edge here. So line it up. There's a reason why I have a ruler. My cat decided to jump on the thing. If you have animals, they like to help as well with the projects. So she may jump down in a little bit. I hope she doesn't jump down while I'm cutting because that shakes the entire table and that's not good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm lining my ruler up with the bit here. Oops, it's upside down. And the reason I don't want it to be upside down is because there's actually something on the bottom of my ruler. All right, dear. Sorry, Tesla. There's something on the bottom of my ruler that helps grip to the mat. And so I want that to be face down so that it actually grips to the mat. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the edge of the ruler with my line, okay? Flip open the rotary cutter. Make sure you flip it closed because otherwise you may hurt yourself. And that's the salvage edge of my fabric. I don't want that, so that goes into a bag. Now what I do need is I need a 2.5 inch square. Now the nice thing about a mat like this is that it is broken up into different marks, which are inches. And then also at the bottom, it has 1/2 inches marked as well. Now, the reason that I have this specific type of ruler that is clear is so that I can also see through to where the lines are. So I need a 2.5 inch square. So let's count 1, 2, and then I need 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch on my ruler is going to line up with this inch mark here. And I have 2.5 inch squares. Now I only need 1 for this pattern, but that's okay. I can use the other one for another piece. I need to make 64 of these all in total. So it's going to be a lot of cutting. I'm not going to make you sit while I cut everything. I'm just going to show you how to cut the pieces enough to make one block. So one block is what you're going to make to put together. And then to make a pattern or the top of a quilt, you're going to put more blocks together. So we're making one of those pieces. Okay, so I got my 2.5-inch square, perfect. I'm going to actually set this fabric aside because I'm going to use a different fabric. I like scrap quilts, which use a variety of different fabrics. I like that it gives it different textures. So I'm going to pull out another piece to use as a different part of my square. And I have a little cheat sheet over here to let me know what the sizes are. So I know I need a 2.5-inch square. I also need a 2.5 by 4.5 piece. Whoop, that's the fold. So I got to start by cutting off the selvage edge on this. And I try and line it up so that I'm not cutting off too much extra fabric because fabric is expensive. And you don't want to cut off all of the fabric that you own because fabric is expensive. So I only try and cut what I absolutely have to get rid of that selvage edge. All right, so that goes in the bag, and I need a 4.5-inch square. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half-inch lines up. They're not perfectly straight on my board. There we go. Yes, you can get very finicky when it comes to cutting your pieces. You can also not be very finicky. All right, so I have the 2.5-inch square. I'm just going to set this up here. I've got my 2.5 by 4.5. Now I need a 2.5 by 6.5. So I'm going to set this one aside. This 6.5 is also going to be from a fabric that is a little bit more white heavy. So let's do I want that one? Ooh, let's do flowers. I kind of like the flowers. Make sure everything lines up. Cut off the selvage edge. Once you get into a cutting groove, you will be able to go quicker. The first one you do, it's going to be a slow process. I'm just warning you in advance. So don't be surprised if cutting takes you a while. All right, I need 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. So line the 1/2 inch, which would be this line here, this dashed line, up with my yellow line on my mat. And by the way, I am pushing down on the ruler. Sorry, I tapped the table. I'm pushing down on the ruler at the same time that I am cutting because I want to apply pressure to this ruler so that it doesn't go sliding all over the place. That's not a good situation. Never a good situation. All right, so 6.5. Now I need an 8.5, a 10.5, a 12.5, and a 14.5. Now I know for a fact that I have a whole bunch of the darker fabric. So you'll notice here I've got a whole bunch that are super saturated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down. I need an 8.5 and a 10.5, which should be out of these because that'll be 2. And then I'll do 2 of the super saturated. All right, so now I got to choose 2 that are kind of my middle saturation. And I'm going to choose this one. And, oh, look, you're on top. Bonus. Oh, no, I want stripes. Let's do stripes. I've got a lot of swirlies. Stripes would probably be good. Okay. So I've got these 2 that I'm going to cut pieces out of next. And then I'll move these to the side because I don't need them as of right now. Now, when I actually go to cut again, I will need them again. All right, so I've got, this one is actually really closely put together. This one, on the other hand, was not, which means that the fold in the fabric was not actually in the middle of the piece. So I had to play with that a little bit. Never a big deal, but always something you have to pay attention to. Alrighty, so put that right here. Next piece is 8.5, which should actually be out of this one. So I'll do my 10.5 out of this one. I'm using the 8.5 out of this one because it has more white in it, if that makes sense. I'm trying to make it an ombre effect, so I'm going for lighter to darker. So now I need 10.5. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.5. Don't be like I did. Don't. Make sure you cover up your thing. You don't want to, oh, wrong one. You don't want to stab yourself accidentally with your rotary cutter. You also want to be careful that you don't go too far with your rotary cutter, i.e. I don't go up all the way because I've got fabric up here and I don't want to cut that. That would be really bad. All right, so there's those two pieces. That's my 10.5. Now I need an 8.5, which I'm going to do out of this one. Oops, sorry guys, that was my phone. Easier for me to see the salvage edge on this side, so I just turned it over. Not a big deal. It just makes it easier for me when I'm lining things up. Thank you, Tesla, for coming and bothering everybody. I'm going to put you down again. Yes, I know. I'm a horrible, horrible cat mom. I know you want me to pay attention to you. I haven't paid attention to you all day. Yes, 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 I'm awful. All right. So then I'm just making sure this lines up. I need 8.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You do not need to count it out if you want to do the math and make sure that it lines up correctly. I don't trust myself a lot of times with the math because it's just easier for me to count. And if you're really good and you've got a really sharp rotary cutter, you can actually layer several different ones on top of each other. I didn't want to do that though because I've got to cut enough for just this piece. All right, so now I need 2, which is a 12.5 and a 14.5. All right, so let's do, I like that one. That's pretty. It's got a little silver in it, which is kind of cool. And let's do a super saturated, this guy. Oop, whoop, I grabbed 2. All right, so now you can kind of see what I'm doing. Oh, sorry guys, my nose itches today. Today is a really bad day for my nose. All right, so this is my next level of saturation. So see how it's actually pretty close to this guy? That's good because I kind of want it to blend together. And so what I'm going to do is this one is going to be the 12.5 since this one is 10.5. And then my last one will be 14.5. Okay, I'm going to move this a little bit further over. It's going to make it a little more challenging because my lamp is right here by my arm. But I want to have plenty of space to be able to cut my 12.5-inch piece. And don't be afraid to press down into your mat. The mat is there so that it absorbs the cutting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12.5, 8. So once again, lining up my 1/2-inch mark on my ruler with the inch line so that it's a 1/2 inch that I'm cutting. All right, so that's my 10.5 or 12.5, 12.5, 12. Took me a bit, sorry guys. And then I need my 14.5. So I gotta cut the selvage edge off of this one. Now these are called jelly rolls or strips. You can get them from quilt stores or online, etc. You can get them sometimes from Joann's, that sort of thing. But the store, whichever store you purchase them from, already cut them into 2.5 inch strips. So I don't have to do that part. I just need to cut the appropriate length. So I don't need to worry about the width. I just got to worry about the length, which is perfect for me because all of my pieces are 2.5 by a certain length. So it's easier, thanks Tesla, to just cut the length than it is to cut the entire thing. I'll show you how to do the next step with my gray fabric, which is cut out a 2.5 inch strip and then cut the length that you need. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and a half, which is 7. So I need to put that on 6. Line up my 1/2 inch. Cut the fabric. All right, so that is all of the pieces I need for my green portion. Now I'm going to work on my gray portion. So what I need to do is I actually need to take a cut of fabric. So this is, whoop, let me throw that away. This is 1/2 yard of fabric that I just got from a quilt shop. It is a silvery gray and it kind of has a nice sheen to it, which is why I wanted it. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut off bits and pieces. Okay, Tesla, you're blocking the camera, sweetie. I'm going to push you off. I'm sorry. Go on. I know. I'm a horrible cat mom. Yes, we've already established that. We will discuss it later. All right, I'm going to move these guys out of the way because they're kind of taking up space on my board and I don't need that right now. All right, setting these aside and I will go on to this part. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to, you'll notice at the top here, see how my edge isn't meeting up? And actually, when you go underneath, it's not meeting up on the bottom either. And that is because when they cut fabric, a lot of times it isn't exactly cut on the grain. And that is perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hold it up and I'm going to try to determine if it is on the grain or not, which for the most part it actually is. And then I'm going to cut off a little bit of the edge here, on the edge here, like I did with my salvage edge, just to square everything up, just to make sure that it's all being cut on the square. Ooh, that's really bad. Is that what you want? That is what you want. Okay, well, I'm going to do it on this side, because that makes it a little bit easier. Make sure everything, you don't have any bumps or anything like that in your fabric when you're cutting. You don't want it to like go wonky while you're cutting it. That would be really bad. See what I mean? It naturally wants to lay like that, and I don't want it like that because I want these salvage edges to match up. You can't really see me doing this because it's off camera, but what I'm doing is I'm holding it up, matching up the salvage edges and kind of shaking it out a little bit. If I was really particular about it, I would actually iron it, but my ironing board is currently what my computer is sitting on. So I am not going to iron it. Yes, I will get flack from everybody who quilts because you're supposed to iron it in this situation, and the only reason I'm not is because my computer is sitting on the ironing board, which makes it a little bit more difficult for me to iron something, just so you're aware. All right, so I've got a folded edge down here and I'm matching the folded edge up with my line. And you'll notice that I've overlapped this edge just a tiny bit up at the top, so that when I'm cutting off the extra over here, truing everything up, I'm cutting off as little as I possibly can to make sure that I'm saving as much fabric as I possibly can. All right. So now that I've done that, whoops, I didn't push far enough down on the top. You can just go over it again. It's not a big deal. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I think I need to sharpen my rotary cutter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this as my edge. So unlike the salvage edge that I did, I'm going to use this as my edge. So I'm going to go over 2.5. So 1, 2.5. So I line my 1/2 inch up with this one, and that will give me my 2.5 inch strip. Now I'm going to make more than one of these because I'm going to need more of this fabric than just one 2.5 inch strip. So I'm going to continue. I already have a 1/2 inch on here, so I'm going to just add 2 inches. Also notice how my fingers are not close to the edge of the ruler. You don't want that, otherwise your finger is going to get cut because it is a very sharp rotary cutter. Sorry. Oh no. No. I wasn't pushing down hard enough, and so I squidged it over a little bit. That's okay. I'll make it work. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut 3 of those because I only really need a little bit for this exercise. I will cut the rest of this later. I'm going to cut some more of this fabric, and I will get back to you once I've cut all of my 2.5 inch strips, and then we will go from there. All right, so I cut up some of my, don't do that, Kristen, some of my strips. So now I have 2.5 inch strips of my gray fabric. So now I'm going to cut these into the pieces that I need. So I need a 2.5 inch square, a 2.5 by a 4.5, 2.5 by 6.5, 2.5 by 8.5, 2.5 by 10.5, and 2.5 by 12.5. But notice I don't need the 14.5 because that is the final piece that we're going to be putting on. So I don't want to obviously have that piece. So I think I'm going to make this one my 2.5 inch square because I really like this one. It's super shiny. I kind of want that in the middle so it takes pride of place. Right, so I'm going to cut off the salvage edge. Boop. And 2.5 inch square. Boop. All right, so 2.5 inch square. All right, so now that I've cut you, I'm going to separate you out. All right, so let's do 2.5 by 4.5. Obviously I think I've got enough that I can do each one its own color. Maybe reuse a color, maybe not, we'll see. Cut off the salvage edge again. And whoop, that's not lining up. It's not lining up. There we go. Much better. Sorry. I'm doing things right on the edge here, and I should move over a little bit, but I want you to be able to see kind of straight down what's going on. And I didn't get all of the salvage edge. Because I'm a doofus. All right, let's try that again. Move you out of the way. Alrighty. Two and a half by 4.5. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So line my 1/2 inch up here. I'm glad Tesla finally laid down so she's not bugging me. All right, 2.5 by 4.5. Now I need 2.5 by 6.5. So I'll do it out of this one. Make sure my salvage edge meets up. And you'll notice on this one that the salvage edge, the pattern actually doesn't start way after the salvage edge. So you can keep that bit on And I'm going to because I'm going to put it in the seams. You're not going to see that part. So I'm going to make sure that I cut off all of the bits that have the holes in it. So all of the bits that have the holes are going to go away, but all of the extra piece, that can stay because that's about 1/4 inch, which is going to be my seam allowance. All right, so I need 2.5 by 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just double checking. Two and a half by 8.5. Then I need 10.5. Oh, so close, guys. So close. I'll just put that one again on the outside edge. Because why not? Or I can put it closer to the middle. It doesn't matter. It's whatever you want to do. That is the great thing about a quilt, is you can make it however you want it to be. And Tesla decided to scratch her scratching post, so I apologize in it. Oh, no, Perrin decided to scratch his scratching post, so I apologize in advance. You're going to hear him scratch his scratching post. All right, I need 8.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8. So I'm at 9.5 inch. And no, you're not supposed to do this under fabric, but I'm too lazy to make this move. Perrin, buddy. Sweetie. Thank you for being helpful. I appreciate you sitting here. Yes, that's a camera. Oh, you're welcome, everyone. Okay, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, okay? Bye. All right. Second to last one. This is going to be my, oh, no, third to last one. 8.5, right? 2.5, 4.5, 6.5, 8.5. Ooh, 10.5. Oops. I was wrong. I've got plenty. I was wrong. It happens quite frequently, actually. Salvage edges there. 2.5, 4.5, 6.5, 8.5. Yep. 10.5. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the last one is 12.5, which is going to be this, which is a slightly different kind of gray, but still mostly in the gray and white realm, which is why I chose it. Stay there. Apparently, pulling you apart has been a grave mistake. Now I have to try and put you back together. All right. And once I'm done cutting these, I'm going to show you how to sew them together. But that is going to require me to move my setup. So I'm going to have to move my overhead camera to my sewing machine, which is actually to my right over here. 1, 2. Whoa, whoa. I'm sorry, guys, I got distracted and didn't actually do my job properly, which would be to line this up. That's when I cut a little crooked. That's okay. the bonus of getting things cut by other people. They're probably going to be straight. Whereas you might cut it crooked, like I did this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 and a half. But that's okay, because cutting it slightly crooked is not going to be the biggest problem in the world. Karen is going to try and sneak on by again. Thank you, buddy. Hey, can you get down? Can you get down? Can you get down? Can you get down? Please. Thank you. Nope, that didn't work. Hi. Hi. Oh, I love you too. I love you so much. Oh, this is the problem with cats. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and a half. Whoa, I've got shaky hands. All right. Karen, bud, not helpful. You're not being helpful. You're being distracting. Oh. All right, so now that I've got all my pieces cut out, so here's my gray pieces. Here are my green pieces. I will show you how to sew this all together, but I need to switch to a different camera view. So I am going to do that really quick, and I will come back and show you what the next step is. All right, I'll see you in a bit. All right, so now I'm back at my sewing machine. So this is my featherweight sewing machine. I've got it threaded with gray thread, not fabric, thread. And I'm using gray because it is a neutral color in between the different colors that I'm using. So that seems to be the best color for me to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 2.5 inch squares and I'm going to sew them together right sides together. Okay, so the right side of the fabric is the one that's all fancy. So in this case, this one is all silvery on this side. This one is all green and white. Notice how on the other side, it is not like that. So that is the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm going to sew them together, right sides together. Now you're going to need a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's really hard here. Oh, there we go. It's much easier to see now. I have a little metal guide right here that is going to help guide my fabric for 1/4 inch. If you do not have a metal guide, there are some sewing machines that actually have a 1/4 inch foot. My sewing machine is unfortunately not one of those. This is an older machine. I like it because it just does straight stitches and that's all I needed to do. So it's perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just sew this together. Okay, just like that. Oh, look, ta-da! Sewed together. And I'm going to cut this, make sure my tension is good. So that means that on this side of the fabric, it is not pulling in any weird way. This side of the fabric is not pulling in any weird way, and it's not, so that's good. And then I'm actually going to take my iron and I'm going to push the seam allowance, so this stuff on the back, to one side of the fabric, and it's usually the darker side. So in this case, it's the gray. So I've got my ironing board here. I apologize. I'm going to try and do this so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to push it towards the gray side. Yep, sorry, you get an arm in the way, but I'm right-handed, so it makes it kind of difficult. So there we go. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add another piece of fabric. So I don't need this other 2.5 inch square. I'm going to set him to the side. The next thing that I'm going to sew on though, and I'm going to my cheat sheet because I've never actually made this one before, so I'm really kind of excited, is I'm going to take and I'm going to sew my third piece of fabric, which is my gray piece, on this side. All right, so right sides together again. So make sure your right sides are together. Make sure it lines up okay. And then I'm just going to sew this guy together. Okay. Notice how I'm turning the wheel. That helps get the thread that is in the bobbin up. Sometimes it has a little bit of a problem doing that. In my case, it's because it's an older machine. A lot of newer machines also have that problem though too. So, all right, so these are sewn together. I'm just going to cut off the little bit of extra thread at the end. Notice that I'm not, if you're a sewing person, you know what I'm talking about, back stitching. That means that you're going to lock the threads on the fabric. Well, technically, notice how when I open this up, this is already locked this side. So I don't need to do that in this case. And I've noticed that it's a little bit off, but that's okay. I don't care. Quilting is sometimes all about making sure that you're just doing the best you can. All right, so now I'm going to press this so that the seam is on the darker side. So in this case, the gray fabric again. Okay, so now that I have this, the next piece I'm going to show is down here. And this is going to be one of my colored pieces. So I actually lined up all of my colored and my gray pieces so that it's smallest on top and then the next size down. So that would be this one. I can grab it. And it is going to be down here. I had to turn it correctly. Oh, pardon me, my nose itches again. So it is going to be right sides together. Okay. Bring that guy up, cut off the extra. Now you don't have to do this every single time you do a piece, cut off the extra fabric and or thread, but I do it right now because I want to show you the next step. Usually I would do a whole bunch, since I have to make 64 of these, usually I would do a whole bunch at one time. And I would just do all of the 2.5 inch squares sewed together, and then all of this connecting piece sewed together, and then all of this connecting piece sewed together. But because I know that I'm going to be constructing this, I wanted to be able to show you what it would look like in the end. Okay, so we've got this one. Then we are going to do the 5th one right here. So that is going to be this guy. Okay, make sure he gets all lined up. And if it's not exactly perfect, that's okay too. That is perfectly fine for it not to be perfect. Yes, I know that sounded very incongruous when I said it, but that's okay. Now in this case, whoop, I accidentally sewed this open, but that's okay. That's okay. I can unpick that if I want to and make a big deal out of it, but I really don't want to because I want to show you what this looks like. So in this case, since I don't really have a dark side of the fabric, I'm actually going to push these this direction. Okay, so I'm going to push them away from my bigger piece. Okay. All right. We went the wrong direction. Sorry, I gotta fix a seam. Okay. So now that I have my 2.5 inch squares, I've got this piece and this piece. I now have this piece. I'm gonna work on the top piece. So I need to grab my, right, yes. I'm checking my guide so that I don't mess up, guys. This is a log cabin pattern, so it's new to me. I've never actually made a log cabin pattern, but I thought it would be, it's pretty easy for everybody to understand and figure out, so I thought it would be a good fit as a starter for everyone. All right, so I've got these. You guys need to go that way. All right, so instead of doing it on the front side, Here it's all nice and flat. These need to actually go this direction. So I'm going to sew it from the back because it'll be easier for me to guide where these need to go. All right, so that got a little off. That's okay. It's all right. It's all good. All right, and that goes towards the darker fabric. So in this case, my gray side. Make sure that gets all nice and flat. Okay, so now that I have this, it's now mostly rectangular, which is good. I need to attach my 7th one over here. So that is going to be this one right here. Right side to right side, make sure that you line up your fabric. Don't do what I did on the last piece, which was not line things up correctly because I'm a doofus. I'm cute, but I'm a doofus. What can I say? All right. And this is just me double checking it lined up okay. And it did. All right. Take that out. Cut off my excess thread. Put that to the side. All right. So in this case, my gray really isn't all that dark, but that's okay. I'm still going to press the seam towards the fabric. Oh my. It doesn't want to press. And I have the steam going on mine because cotton fabric, which is what this is, doesn't like to press with just heat. It really likes steam as well. So that's why I have steam. You can hear the coming off of my my lovely iron. Oh my goodness, it's been a day, guys. All right, so that was 7. Now I'm going to do 8. So 8 will be this piece here. I'm going to throw the extra to the side because I don't need that right now. Line up everything so that it fits. You're going to notice that my edge here isn't exactly perfectly straight, and that's okay. That's okay. We're going to hide that a little bit by sewing across it. So it'll look perfectly straight. Well, or mostly straight. And that's the thing with piecing together a quilt top is sometimes you just got to do the best that you can. Yes, Karen, it's going to sew. Yes, it is. Sorry, he's decided that he wants to investigate the sewing machine. I'm going to have to pull him down. Come here, bud. I love you very much, but you can't be up here. I don't want to get you accidentally. Having sewn through my own finger before, it is not fun. It is quite painful. Please don't do it. Please, please don't. And go on, bud. I don't want you up with the iron either. All right, so here's this one. I'm going to press this to the outside fabric. In this case, my greens, because my greens are getting darker than my grays. All right, so press that seam. And once again, I wouldn't normally do this all in one go. I would sew all of one set together. So all of these, then all of these, then, you know, then this, then, because I have to make 64 of these. Just a reminder, it's 64 because I don't hate myself enough. All right, so now that I've done 8, we're actually going to do 9. So that is going to be this guy right here with my stripes. Sorry, gotta make sure that my thread is going towards the back. You don't want that to get caught up in the fabric because that'll pull strange. why you do that. You're not supposed to do that. Usually it doesn't. Usually it doesn't flip like that. All right, buddy. Remember what I said? I can't have you up here. Not while I'm sewing. I don't want kitties to get hurt. Kitties shouldn't be up here while I'm sewing. Oh, that's not a very straight seam. That's okay. It'll be okay. Everybody's going to see how I fudge things. Yeah. Yeah. Super great. Okay. Sorry, everyone. You're just going to stare at my arm. I'm right-handed, so having the iron on this side is not the best idea, but it works okay. All right, so there's that. Next is going to then be 10, which will be this upper one here. So that'll be this piece. Okay, so this one, right side is this side. Hi. Now, if you're so inclined, you can actually pin the pieces of fabric together. I don't do that normally since I'm just sewing a very short seam. It seems silly for me to pin the pieces of fabric together. So instead, I just rely on the tension of the fabric resting against itself, because cotton fabric has a certain feel to it, a nap, which means that it likes to stick to itself. So I kind of rely on that. He's now investigating all of my fabric. I kind of rely on that to be able to stick and do what I want it to do. But I also have to sit here sometimes and realign, which is what I have to do right now because I didn't align the bottom as much as I should have. Okay. There's that. Extra thread. Please don't chew on that, sweets. All right. Let's see if I can do this with my left hand. Probably not. All right, so in this case, I'm going to press it towards the fabric. You can see Perrin's tail right here. Okay. All right, so this was my top piece. Yeah, I didn't do a very good job pressing that. It's because it was with my left hand. I'm sorry, guys. You're gonna have to just deal with the fact that my right hand is just gonna go across the screen. Sorry, everybody. Problem is, I'm so used to using my right arm. Using my left is highly uncomfortable for me because what I do is I give a light tug with my left hand on the fabric that I'm pulling away, so that hopefully I can. Thanks, buddy, for playing with the cord. I can pull it taut enough so that I don't get this weird bubble thing that I've got going on here. So I'm going to deal with that because otherwise it's going to make a problem for me. I may have to deal with that in a way I didn't want to, but that's okay. All right, let's try that. See if that helps. Ooh, that's one. Ooh, that's very one. All right, that helped. That helped. I had to press the seam in the opposite direction because it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. That is fine. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I've got the top piece. So this will be the final top piece up here, but I need to put a piece here, and I need to put a piece here and here. Okay, so that's why I have another gray. So that's the next one I'm going to add is my last gray. Then I've got two more of my greens. You can kind of see the ombre effect that I wanted to have happen. So I've got lighter in the middle going towards darker. And it's not going to be completely perfect because it's strips. If it was smaller pieces, you could get it closer to an actual ombre effect. If you did like just the 1/4 inch squares, you could get it. Thank you, buddy, for knocking that over. Closer to an actual ombre effect. But because I'm using strips and they're straight, it does make it a little bit more difficult. It looks like I'm gonna have to play with this. Just a tiny bit. Okay. Now I'm just double checking that my sides are lining up. Oh, and notice how it's off down here? Well, it's because I wasn't paying attention. All right, which way do you need to go? So I just put my needle down because I needed to fiddle with my seam allowance back here. It was flipping the opposite direction. And if I put my needle down, I can lift up on my presser foot here, which is what pushes the fabric against the feed dogs, which are the little, I'll show you a second. Hold on, you can't actually see them because I'm sewing. The feed dogs are these little, almost like tread-like things on the bottom, and that's what helps pull the fabric across your plates. So it pulls it across, and this presser foot presses the fabric against the feed dog so that both sides slide at the same time and you don't have one slipping faster than the other, because that would be bad. That would result in your fabric getting sewed together very unevenly. All right. So sorry, everybody, you're not going to see me press these seams very much anymore because I'm actually behind the camera right now. Could not stand being in front any longer, so sorry, everybody. It's okay. You don't have to watch my arm go across the screen. Instead, you just get to see the results, which is that. Oh, isn't that so pretty? Yes, it is. Oh, it's lovely. Sorry. I get a little slap happy sometimes when I'm doing this. All right, so the second to last one is going to be this dude down here. So I'm going to move him over because I don't need him. And then the last piece is actually going to be here. And it'll actually be a square at that point in time because we've added enough strips to make it a square. So let me line this guy up. We're so close to being done with this block. Now, please keep in mind that this block is one of 64 that I have to make in order to make my quilt. And I think I'm going to need some extra fabric before I can actually finish this thing because I don't think I got enough of the green, which was actually a gift. My mom gave it to me as a gift. So, you know, I wasn't going to complain. I like fabric in any way, shape, or form. You kind of want to hand it to me. And my mom's also a quilter. So she was like, well, I'm not going to use this. Here, go ahead, take it, use it. And I was like, oh, really? I quite like this color, as evidenced by the teal that I'm wearing right now. I quite like the colors of blue and green mixed together. So, you know, that would be really cool. I've wanted to try doing a log cabin with an ombre effect and do gray, in this case, like a silvery gray. So I was like, well, that might be really cool. Let's try that. So you guys get to see the results. All right, so now I'm just going to press this, tugging ever so gently on the extra fabric so that it doesn't pull out of shape, but it does get all of the extra seam allowance in there. So see how that doesn't make a bubble? You don't want a bubble. Bubbles are bad. Bubbles are what happen when this happens. Bubbles are bad. All right, so the last one is going to be the final piece. So I'm going to move this guy to the side. I got quite a bit of extra bits hanging off of him, so I'm just going to cut some of that off because I don't want to deal with it. All right, and he is going to go over here. And remember, right sides together, so this is my darker saturated side, which is going to go against. Oh, really? I was even tugging on you ever so gently, and you decided to be a jerk. Oh, fine. I will make you do what I want you to do. All right, that's much better. Much better. Now you don't have that weird bubbly thing. Cool. All right, so, oh my, I lost where I was. Okay, so this, it's gonna go here. So what I'm gonna do, that's what I thought. I'm gonna line this up. Darker side goes onto the right side. Line this up like this, making sure that everything is nice and together. And I've got some extra of my silver over here. So it's not a tiny bit, it's actually quite a bit. So I'm gonna just cut that a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more like what it needs to be in order to get my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So then I'm going to put this guy right here. Which way do you need to go? You need to go this way because you're being a jerk. Being a jerk. Stop being a jerk. No, Perrin. Kitties can't be up here when I'm sewing. Okay, you're gonna, okay, go over there. Fine with that. Go explore. Oh my, I was going too fast. And my seam is not straight at all. Oh my goodness, little speed demon. What are you doing? He really wants to go. All right, let me double check my seam allowance up here. Yeah, see how it kind of dips in a little bit? I'm gonna re-sew that. I'm just gonna sew over that and get the correct seam allowance on there because apparently my sewing machine really wanted to do a speed racer sort of thing. So we're just gonna make sure that that is the correct seam allowance, just like that. Perfect. And once again, because it's going to get sewed into other quilt pieces or quilt blocks, no need to backstitch. Though normally I would. Unfortunately, a Singer Featherweight, like this type of machine, it doesn't actually do a backstitch. It doesn't exist because backstitches weren't a thing in the 1920s on a sewing machine. So, alrighty. And this is the last dude, the last piece, my friends, and I will show you the final product in a second once I'm done pressing the seam, because I want it to actually lay semi-flat when I'm done. Yeah, semi-flat. You don't have to be perfect, just mostly. All right. Ta-da! All right, let me move my sewing machine out of the way so you can kind of see it. All right, so this is a log cabin. So what we've got is we've got two 2.5 inch squares, and then we've got the 4.5 inch, the 6.5 inch, 8.5 inch, 10.5, 12.5, and then this guy's a 14.5. And what this does is it creates a square in the ends. And thank you, Perrin, for putting your little kitty paws all over it. I appreciate it. And again, this is just one block of what will be 64. So thank you for sitting with me and working through this. As you can see, it's not exactly perfect. They're a little, it's not, you know, the seams are a little in a couple of places, and that's okay. Quilts don't have to be perfectly perfect every time. They can be a little bit wonky. It's all good. That's what makes them unique. All right, so thank you so much for joining me with an intro on how to do quilting. So I will stop sharing and recording, and I will see everybody later. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.